The Wyoming House of Representatives will please come to order. Welcome, members, to the 22nd day of the 66th Wyoming Legislature General Session. Got a few committees just coming in the door, it looks like. So we are missing one committee, but we're going to go ahead and initiate the roll, and we'll finish it up in a little bit. Please call the roll.
Convening roll for the 22nd day, Thursday, March 19th, 2021. Friday. You did. Andrew.
It'll be, hey.
Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Clifford.
I'll get to as soon as I have it. Yeah.
Clifford. Connolly. Grego. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flittner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stiff. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Here. So Deputy Clerk will hold the roll open. We have a committee that is still hard at work, and we'll hold the roll open. So at this time, we're joined by Pastor Sean again for our prayer of the day. So members, please join. We also have a special guest who's going to join us up front. She's going to speak a little later, but so she'll be introduced in a bit, but Senator Lummis is here as well. So Pastor Sean.
Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, just so thankful again to be here today. Thankful for each one of these servants who are here serving the state of Wyoming, the people of Wyoming, Lord. Father, I recognize that each person here comes with a different religious perspective, a different political perspective, different life experiences. And sometimes those just different perspectives and experiences can lead to difficult conversations and differences of opinion on how to legislate. So Lord, my prayer for them today is in the midst of those differences, in the midst of all of those different perspectives and experiences, Lord, that you would allow their hearts to be filled with compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness, patience, Lord, that they would bear with one another, that they would forgive each other just as you have offered to forgive each one of them. Father, that they would come to love one another. Father, that your peace and that thankfulness will rule in this house. So Lord, I would pray that you would continue to bless the state of Wyoming through the work that they do, the legislation that they do. Lord, we thank you that we have a government where we, the people, are king. And we thank you for these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Pastor Sean. It's been a nice, short 3-day week with you. We appreciate your service to the Wyoming Legislature and to our community. Thank you very much. So remember, yeah, right, Pastor, right down one of the aisles there. Appreciate you. So members, you can certainly remain standing if you'd like. I'm just going to sit so I can get closer to my microphone. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome back Senator Cynthia Lummis to the Wyoming Legislature. She was sworn in to the United States Senate January 3rd, 2021, becoming the first woman to serve as a United States Senator from the great state of Wyoming, the Equality State. Prior to being elected to the U.S. Senate, she served 8 years in the U.S. Congress, 14 years in the Wyoming Legislature, certainly the highlight, I'm sure, of her service, and 8 years as Wyoming State Treasurer. She is currently a member of the Environment and Public Works Committee, Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, and the Banking, Housing, and Urban Development Committee. Please help me in welcoming home United States Senator Cynthia Lummis.
Wow. Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, may I have the privilege of the floor?
It is our pleasure to have you here. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great joy for me to be back in this chamber. I started serving in this chamber in 1979. One of my fellow freshmen was Charlie Scott. So you get a sense about how long ago that was. I spent 12 years in this house, falling in love with Wyoming and its people. And I'm sure you're doing the same. It's unavoidable. It's part of being a steward of this state and joining other people who feel that same love and stewardship. And I'm always so grateful when I look at the legislature, because I know that our state is in excellent hands. People of goodwill from both parties in all areas of the state who just want to see our state prosper, its people be well, and to protect our wonderful state of Wyoming. So God bless you all for your work. I am joined today by some fellow old friends and staffers who I honestly did steal from this body. It is because I have great confidence in their ability to work on Wyoming's behalf and with you. So please consider them a resource. Of course, Leland Christensen is our state director, former legislator and county commissioner. Chris Land, who I truly did steal from you all, former LSO staffer and banking commission lawyer. And then Brendan Ames is with us today too. Brendan Ames is filling a new position for us. I don't know that a Wyoming member of Congress has ever had an economic development position. Brendan is here in Wyoming and will work with you whenever you call on him. You're going to absolutely love him. He's fabulous. He's also training for the United States Olympics at this time. He's a former USC hurdler and a great Cheyenne guy, Brendan Ames. I was also asked by one of your fellow members how our unguided missile is doing. And I said, oh, Tyler Lindholm, of course. Tyler is our state policy director doing a fabulous job. He goes back and forth between Wyoming and Washington. So he can carry the message of Wyoming to Washington and help us do good policy on your behalf. In fact, he identified a piece of legislation that it would allow us to expand rural broadband across public lands and Indian country, so we can get rural broadband to areas that are not well served. And mentioning broadband is gives you one sense of one of my major efforts on your behalf. I'm on the Commerce Committee, and rural broadband is the reason I requested the Commerce Committee. It's an area where the federal government can help us improve our service. So all the information you can feed us that will help us better serve you in that effort will be deeply appreciated. I'm also on the Environment and Public Works Committee. I'm the ranking member of the subcommittee that deals with the Endangered Species Act, another issue that we have to encounter frequently. And so there again, if you have ESA issues, by all means, share them with us so we can help you. And finally, I'm on the Banking Committee. And because of the really innovative and thoughtful work this legislature did with regard to special purpose depository institutions and the ability to invest in Bitcoin, you have set Wyoming apart and ahead of every other state and apart and ahead of the United States in efforts to create opportunities for distributed ledger, blockchain, and especially Bitcoin. We have been working with the FDIC, the CFPB, the Federal Reserve, and all of the government regulators of finance in an effort to make sure the charters that were issued pursuant to your legislation are authorized and begin working for this country and for Wyoming as soon as possible. I have formed a Financial Innovation Caucus based around your legislation. My co-chair is Kirsten Sinema, a senator from Arizona, and we'll be working on furthering Congress's understanding of Bitcoin and its ability as a store of value to literally save us from ourselves. Right now, we're at getting close to $30 trillion in debt. Not one person knows how we're going to retire that debt. Not one. And yet we're going to continue to grow our debt. Right now, we're paying about $1 in every $5 goes to service our debt. But that number is growing as well. And as interest rates go up, that number will increase. It will not be long before debt service will exceed the amount of money we spend on national defense. And when we get to the point where we are borrowing money to pay the debt service on our debt, that's going to be what I think is the black swan moment, the moment when we are going to have to come to terms with what we've done to ourselves. But the good news is Bitcoin and your work with Bitcoin allows people to save something that is going to be valuable, that's not being debased over time. And so I continue to be an acolyte for your work in Washington on those issues. That's why I stole Chris Land from you, because he is now helping inform and educate the federal regulators about these issues and legislators about these issues. And then I am the ranking member on a committee that surprised me, but I'm just enjoying it so much. It's Science and Space. My chairman is former Governor Hickenlooper of Colorado. We have met. I had dinner the other night with Jim Bridenstine, who just finished being the director of NASA. He was President Trump's appointee as head of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and he and I had served together in the House. We're old friends there. We were both Freedom Caucus kids. And so we had dinner, and it was illuminating about the opportunities that places like Wyoming can have with regard to space. And of course, on the science side, we'll be working with the University of Wyoming and the National Science Foundation to expand UCAR, NCAR, and other opportunities for research here in Wyoming that is nationally significant. I served in this House with Doug Osborne. Some of you knew Doug. He and his wife, Ruth, passed away a couple of weeks ago together. And what a fitting way. They were such dear friends and partners in life. And so when I learned that, I had to smile and recall so many wonderful debates and efforts and the work we did on the floor of this House. And you will have those memories, and you will take them with you for the rest of your life. This is an important place. The work you're doing is important. I honor you. I respect you. I kind of envy you. And I applaud your work. God bless you, and God bless the state of Wyoming.
We're going to send you down. You can come back to this. If you want. So we can do our traditional down the aisles, and I gave her the option to come back up this side, just so everybody gets fair shake in this. Thank you, Senator Lummis. We certainly appreciate you being here with us here today. Thank you. All right, members, let's come back together and come back to order. Our guests, we appreciate you being here. Cynthia Lummis, Senator Cynthia Lummis, Leland, our friend Leland, Chris Lamb, and Brendan. We wish you all well. We thank you for your service to the state of Wyoming. Did we get our health committee back yet? House, please come back to order. Let's finish our roll call. So members of the Labor Health Committee, if you'll please join us on the floor and we'll finish the roll call. Welcome back. Deputy Clerk.
Clifford. Connolly. Hallinan. Flitner. Nicholas. Martinez. Martinez. Ottman. Stivar. Worf. Wilson. Martinez. Martinez. Sixty present.
Thank you very much. 60 present on the 22nd day of our session. All right, let's get back on track with the business of the day, Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 18th, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Haroldson and Provenza.
Thank you. With that order of business of Senate files on first reading. Just a note, members, as you will note that there's a different, I don't know what it is, clacker banger, whatever these things are called. Because yesterday there was a Thor moment up here and the other one was damaged. So it's going in for repairs. We might have to use Mal's. Mal is going to be our repairman for the Thor hammer. Yeah. All right. We're at that order of Senate files on first reading. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 19.
Senate File 19, sponsored by Judiciary.
First reading of the bill.
Public Health Emergencies, Immunity Amendments.
Senate File 19 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next Senate File is 100.
Senate File 100, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
First reading of the bill.
Internet Freedom, Prohibiting Discrimination.
Senate File 100 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next Senate File 146.
Senate File 146, sponsored by Senator Nethercott.
First reading of the bill.
6-person juries in civil cases.
Senate File 146 referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next Senate File is 85.
Senate File 85, sponsored by Senator Ellis.
First reading of the bill.
Property Tax Reporting and Exemption.
Senate File 146, 85 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Next Senate File is 157.
Senate File 157, sponsored by Senator Beitman.
First reading of the bill.
Property rights, limitation on local authority.
Senate File 157 is referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. Next Senate File is 16.
Senate File 16, sponsored by corporations.
First reading of the bill.
New net metering systems.
Senate File 16 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next Senate File is 33.
Senate File 33, sponsored by Senator Baldwin.
First reading of the bill.
Physician's Assistants Amendments.
Senate File 33 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next Senate File is 74.
Senate File 74, sponsored by Senator Landon.
First reading of the bill.
Athletic trainer revisions.
Senate File 74 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next Senate File is 113.
Senate File 113, sponsored by Senator Wassenberger.
First reading of the bill.
Business Ready Communities Amendments.
Senate File 113 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Thank you. Messages from the Senate.
Message 247. Mr. Speaker, the Senate adopted the Committee of the Whole report, failing the bills listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 150, Death Penalty Repeal. Ayes 11, noes 19. This bill has been indefinitely postponed. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Standing Committee Reports.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 82, Implementation Requirements for Medical Marijuana, respectfully reports same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Crago, Oakley, Olson, Provenza, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Larson Dan, Rodriguez Williams, Washit. Representative Olson, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 96, Homicide Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Crago, Larson Dan, Oakley, Olson, Rodriguez Williams, Washit, Swanitzer, Provenza, Noes, Representatives Provenza and Yen. Representative Olson, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 9 engrossed, State Employee Moving Expenses, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kenner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Larson, Vice Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 93, the WICHE Repayment Program, Veterinary Medicine Students, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kenner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Larson, Vice Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 120, Investment of State Non-Permanent Funds, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kenner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Larson, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 13, Abandoned Vehicles, Towing Service Liens and Titles, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Brown, Burkhart, Henderson, McGuire, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Stivar. Noes, Representatives Baker, Burt. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
I believe we have a privilege of the floor. Representative Simpson. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor. Members, I have with me a guest that I'd like to introduce to you today. I have my oldest daughter, Bethany, and her husband, Stan, and their 4 children. They come from Salt Lake City. I'd like you to welcome them.
Well, that's special. We're glad you're here with us, Dave. You stick around for a couple hours or the rest of the day, you'll see Grandpa in action. Glad you're here with us. Welcome. Welcome. We're on that order of business of bills on second reading. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 125.
House Bill 125, sponsored by Representative Newsom, simulcasting, an act relating to pari-mutuel wagering.
House Bill 125, having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill is 164.
House Bill 164, sponsored by Representative Schwartz, Grand Teton National Park, transfer of state lands, an act
House-
relating to state lands.
Excuse me, House Bill 164, having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 165.
House Bill 165, sponsored by Representative Harshman, Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program, an act relating to higher education.
We do have an amendment. Representative Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 165 and ask for your favorable consideration. So remember, we talked about that good little bill on the Wyoming Tomorrow's program, and I totally support it. And inside of it, it had a residency requirement of only 1 year. And I just wanted to have a conversation about that. I'm not married to this amendment of 3 years. So instead of 1 year, I'm suggesting 3 years. And I just want to hear the debate of the body if there is any, but I think 1 year is too little amount of residency. So on and support of the amendment. Thank you.
Any other member first time, Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's a friendly amendment. I'd vote aye.
Any other discussion? Discussion, seeing none. All members are voting on second reading amendment number 1, House Bill 165. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. House Bill 165, having read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 166.
House Bill 166, sponsored by Representative Harshman, utility presumption against early facility retirements, an act relating to public utilities.
House Bill 166, having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill, House Bill 171.
House Bill 171, sponsored by Representative Harshman, executive branch funding restoration, an act relating to the operation of state government.
House Bill 171, having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill, House Bill 190.
House Bill 190, sponsored by Representative Brown, vehicle titles for non-resident owners, an act relating to vehicle certificates of title.
House Bill 190, having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 198.
House Bill 198, sponsored by Representative Nicholas, University Water System, an act relating to the University of Wyoming.
We do have an amendment. Representative Bear. This amendment just came to my desk, so you'll have to look online to refresh your system. Representative Bear, please proceed with your amendment, second reading number 1.
Thank
And
you, Mr.
move-
Speaker.
Go ahead, please move it and
Thank-
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that second reading amendment number 1 for House Bill 198.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, this idea is that we have a study done. I'm trying to give us a little bit of time to let people cool down in this situation. Let's find out exactly what needs to be done. Let's give it a little bit of time, and that's what this amendment does. Just ask for a study to be completed so that we can tell what is needed and what is the cost to the parties before we go to court. I think that the bill in itself will get us into court quickly. Obviously, there's already been efforts made to address the issue. And so I'd just like to slow things down a little bit. Let's study the issue and try to cool down hot heads. So I ask for your favorable consideration of the amendment.
Discussion on the amendment. Chairman Nicholas, first time Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask that you turn down this amendment. The last thing in the world we need is another study about an issue that has been in debate and in discussions, informal discussions, mediation, and we've gone through permitting where the city of Laramie would show up at the well, when we're trying to get the water permits, objecting to those permits. We've had the governor mediate this issue. We know exactly what the issues are. We know that there is no resolution to it. The city of Laramie passed a resolution last week, basically saying that this bill is unconstitutional. And so we're at a crossroads where a decision has to be made. What this bill does, it avoids litigation, number one. Number two, it simply allows the university to exercise its constitutional right to drill a water on its own property and use that water for beneficial use. And I would respectfully submit that that has nothing to do with the study. And who's going to do the study? And what are they going to study? And what result are we going to get from the study? Well, we're going to be right back to where we are today. So either vote the bill up or down, but we certainly don't need a study. So on and against.
Representative Conley, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and I'm not sure about the amendment, to be honest with you, in turning it into a study. Know that I had thought that I had pushed the button on a second reading amendment, that I had conversations with a top UW administrator as well as the mayor in order to honestly, this bill puts the thumb on the scale. Let's face it, they're all lawyered up. This bill puts a thumb on the scale, right? Let's see if we can just solve it. You'll have two choices: go with a study for another year or look for a third reading amendment that tries to get them out of the muck that they're in. Thank you.
Representative, Madam Minority Floor Leader. There's another amendment on the bill. I just notified the body and the presenter. Representative Stivar for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On for the amendment, against the bill. As clarification, the University of Wyoming, the school over the hill, already has 4 other wells they use to irrigate. Why aren't they using them? And they're in the Chugwater Aquifer, where these other 2 are in the Casper Aquifer. That's a question I'd like answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Gray, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really want to commend the bringer of this amendment. It's really well crafted and it's important to be studious. I always, one of my favorite things to do when I was studying was to study when I was in school. And so it's important to be studious. And I think we want to be studious. I bring attention to lines 36 through 38 on this amendment, which states that we're going to study the impact of the water supply of the city of Laramie and the estimated cost of the state of Wyoming for a groundwater interference study. And that's one of the things that hasn't been talked about too much here. I mean, the last representative talked a little bit about this. I mean, what's going to be the effect of this to the city's water supply? I mean, they have a real interest here. So I think this is just a great amendment. We need to study this and get an understanding of what on earth's going on.
Thank you. Any other member first time? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment, we heard yesterday that the city of Laramie said, you're using too much of our water. What are you going to do about it? So they drilled a couple of wells. And once we had a well that works, they said, oh, wait a minute, we're losing a lot of income. It's unconstitutional what they're trying to do. And one of the speakers yesterday said, well, we've drilled all these wells and we're still no closer than we were. We've put a lot of money towards this. We need to see this through. I'm on and against the amendment for the bill.
Thank you. Any other members first time? Members for their first time? First time, members, second time before the sponsor, second time before the sponsor. Representative Nicholas, Chairman Nicholas, second time.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't know how many of you, well, we've got a few engineers in here and folks that know what happens and what you have to go through to get a well permit for groundwater. But what happens is the state engineer's office and their hydrologists go and evaluate the aquifer where the water well is going to go into, and they make a determination on whether or not and how that may impact any surrounding wells or the aquifer that could by any means be influenced by those water wells. So the study has already been done. That's the job of the state engineer's office. And they made findings. And during the public hearing for the water well permits, the city of Laramie was present, had their folks testify about their concerns about the influence of these water wells on the Casper aquifer. And there were specific findings by the hydrologist and the engineer that it would not have an impact on either the other wells owned by the city or on the aquifer itself. So all of this has been completed. They've gone through the process that we have established by statute and by constitution on how you get a groundwater permit and a well permit. And it was approved to a certain, up to 524 gallons per minute, basically, which is a heck of a lot of water. So that shows you how successful these two wells were, because there's plenty of water where these were drilled. And there is no influence because it's already been studied. So all this is just a reason to say, well, we don't want to follow, if we want to do another study, we're saying we don't trust the state engineer's office. And so we're second guessing the state engineer's office on whether or not they should have a water permit and how much water they can take out of that well. And I would respectfully say that's not the purview of the legislature. It's by the Constitution, that's the state engineer's responsibility. And this work has already been done and the bridge has already been crossed. So I would respectfully ask that you vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Second time, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And what this amendment does, the other thing it does is it makes clear that we're just not going to bail out the university every time. You know, I've talked to a lot of people on this, and the negotiations that occurred were not in good faith because they've come to accept that this body is going to every time side with the university. So I just think this is going to make it clear that we're not into that in this situation. And I urge and I vote on the amendment.
Any other members first time or second time, excuse me, second time before the sponsor, second time to the sponsor, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In answer to the Chairman of Appropriations, this is an unfunded mandate on the university. That's who will be doing the study, and they will have to find the funds to do that. Since they've got this issue, I believe that's an appropriate place to put the responsibility. Again, this will give us time to get an answer. If we're going to step out on one side or the other of this issue, we should have all the details. This study would provide that. These are reports directly to the legislature for that purpose. And again, it will allow time to let hot heads cool down. So with that, I again ask for your favorable consideration of the amendment.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on second reading, Amendment Number 1, House Bill 198. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment has not been adopted. We have a second amendment. Madam Minority Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 198 and ask for your favorable consideration. Friends, this is the amendment that I thought I pushed the button on, not sure when it went through, all of that. But know that after getting to the mic yesterday and being really frustrated with both parties, I was in contact with both parties between last night and today and said, come on, can't you get this done? Admittedly, they have all lawyered up, both sides. Make no two bones about it. They have all lawyered up. So I talked with the mayor and I talked with a top UW administrator. One says, okay, I can't make a decision for city council. The other, I can't make a decision for board of trustees. But that being said, this language right here right, will get them to settle down. Right. And so if you remember from the testimony yesterday, right now UW is paying the city about $180,000 to $220,000 a year for that water. What this amendment says is for the next 5 years, do what you want, but pay the city $50,000 for 5 years only. All right. Everyone settles down. At least I hope so. Right. You hope so. So with that, I don't know if this will solve it, but we can hope so that we never have to hear about watering the Jacoby Golf Course ever again. So with that, I would ask for your favorable consideration.
I don't know what, any other member of the first time, I don't know what we'll talk about next year without it, but any other member for their first time? Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I suppose I need to bring a third reading amendment to ask the city of Laramie to pay UW $100,000 a year for the time and cost of the wells and all the work they have to go through, just, and also to make up for the $50,000. It's, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very odd amendment. I just respectfully ask you to vote no.
Any other members first time? Any others members first time? Representative Gray, first time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this isn't about money. This is about a principle and so I'd urge a no vote. Thank you.
Any other member first time? First time, first time, second time to the sponsor, Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do think this is about money. Please vote aye.
Members, we are voting on second reading, amendment number 2, House Bill 198. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment has been defeated. House Bill 198, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is 207.
House Bill 207, sponsored by Representative Haroldson, coal-fired generation facility closures, litigation funding, and act relating to the administration of government.
House Bill 207, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 217.
House Bill 217, sponsored by Representative Wilson, Community Health Center and Rural Health Clinic grants, and act relating to public health and safety.
House Bill 217, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 236.
House Bill 236, sponsored by Representative Washit, firearms transactions, financial discrimination, and act relating to banks.
House Bill 236 does have an amendment. Representative Yin.
Point of,
What's your point, Mr. Washit?
Mr. Chairman, this proposed amendment changes the original purpose of the bill and is thus impermissible. Ask the chair to rule.
So technically, I don't have a motion on the amendment. So the point of order is out of order until there's a motion on the amendment. So Representative Yin, and then I will take your point of order, Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 236 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Representative Washit.
Point of order.
And
As
your
stated.
point- Thank you for the point of order. Chief Clerk, could I see the bill?
No.
Mr. Washit, I'd like a little more explanation of your point of order with reference to the amendment in the bill, please.
Mr. Chair, specific to the amendment, deleting the word firearm on page 5, line 6, and then inserting subparagraph B on page 5 after line 12. And then deletion of the word firearm on page 5, line 16, and again on page 5, line 21. The whole purpose of the act of the bill pertains to firearm discrimination, and removing the term firearm in all these locations changes the purpose of the bill.
Yeah. So I certainly could call a rules committee at this point, but I'm just going to rule from the chair. And certainly you can object to my ruling. Either party can object to the ruling, and we can take it to the body. So actually, I'm going to rule that it does not change the purpose, because it's the line, the page 5, line 6 is just removing it from the title. It still talks about firearm entity on line 10 of that page. It talks about firearms on line 11 of that page, and the subsequent one, adding the B that wasn't specific to it. So I'm going to rule that it does not change it beyond its intent, and you're certainly welcome to challenge the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respect the ruling. We can just vote on the amendment.
All right, thank you. Representative Yen, please proceed with your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So body, as the speaker said, the intention isn't to remove firearm entities. It's just broadening it. So the penalties that apply to firearm entities will also apply to discrimination with regards to race, color, religion, disability, sex, or national origin. So this specific list is from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I want to make sure that if we're going to penalize banks for discrimination, we need to make sure that we equally penalize for all forms of discrimination, right? So if we only apply the $10,000 penalty for a bank specifically for firearm entities, and don't apply it equally for discrimination with regards to the Civil Rights Act, I think we're going to come into an issue. And I also think it should be the policy of the body that we penalize equally under the law with regards to discrimination. And I don't think that a specific type of company, if discrimination happens against a firearm company versus a company that is a religious company or a woman-owned company, that the penalty should be different. So I do ask for your favorable consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, members. First time, Representative Washut, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we know what we're trying to accomplish with this legislation, and what is being proposed in this amendment goes beyond that. And I think if we're sincere about trying to protect firearms industries in the state of Wyoming, we want to keep this bill specific to that purpose. Vote no on the amendment, yes on the bill.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? Members for their first time? Members for their first time? Representative Henderson, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I think this is a very interesting amendment. And I do think discrimination is in the content of the bill. I'm going to suggest that we vote yes on the amendment, because I think we should make sure that we apply the things related to discrimination equally across all of the factors that are involved. But I don't think in the end that the bill is needed, because I don't, and thereby I don't think the end result is we need the bill. So I'm going to vote yes on the amendment and no on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? First time, second reading, amendment number 1, House Bill 130 or 236. Any other member second time? Second time before the sponsor? Second time before the sponsor, to the sponsor, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So there is a penalty for discrimination against an entity in any of these classes. So between two entities, regardless of whether they're a bank or not, that penalty is $750. So if a bank discriminates against a women-owned company because they're a woman-owned company, I think you'll find that they could be penalized $750. But if we want to say that banks should not discriminate, and we're going to have the $10,000 penalty in this bill, we should apply that equally among all of our anti-discrimination penalties. And so again, I'll ask you for your favorable consideration. This will still apply to firearm companies in the same way. It does not remove that in any way. It just makes sure that we apply this equally against any sort of discrimination that banks may do. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, members. We are voting on second reading, Amendment number 1, House Bill 236. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment has not been adopted. House Bill 236 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Chief. So members, on our agenda today is now the explanation of Senate File 001. And Mr. Speaker Pro Tem will take care of that piece of the business and maybe the rest of the day. I might be excused for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Speaker, right before that, can I refer a bill, please?
Please proceed, Chairman.
I'd like to refer House Bill 82 to Committee Number 2 Appropriations.
Without
Re-refer.
objection, House Bill 82 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Hey, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, can I get a privilege of the floor while
Yeah,
you're doing
go
paperwork?
ahead, Chairman Zwanzer.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, the former mayor of the great city that we're in, who served for the last 4 years, is up in our Eastern Gallery. Please welcome former Mayor Marion Orr to the body.
Okay, members. Pursuant to Joint Rule 14-1F1, Senate File Number 001, it's Senate's budget, is placed directly on third reading for the purpose of explanation of the Senate amendments. And so, members, we will work through, everyone should have received a sheet on their desk, I believe. What I think we'll proceed with this is we'll go section by section and then take questions at the end of that section. So write your questions down as we go. Also asked by a couple members of the Appropriations Committee, for the sake of civil discussion, we will just refer to the other body. We know we're speaking about the Senate amendments, so we'll just say the other body and keep it simple. With that, Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would move the standing committee report from your committee number 2 appropriations on Senate File 1 and pursuant to 14-1E 1 and 2. The following list is provided, and you all have this. You should all have this in your mailbox or on your desk. You should all have this on your mailbox or your desk. This is the formal document that we present to the floor, and then after we present it, my signature goes on it and then it goes into the official record. And so I'm not going to list all of the amendments, but let me give you a quick synopsis of it. Just to round things out, the total number of amendments, the House had 24 budget amendments that passed. The Senate had 16, and the Senate had 16 amendments that passed. And let's just talk about dollars in general. In a general fund, the House spent $16.9 million or appropriated it, that much funds from the general fund. The Senate reduced the general fund by 1.15 million. The total difference is $18 million roughly. So that's the differences between our amendments and their amendments. With regards to the LSRA, the rainy day fund, other than the budget balancers, which you may recall, we just put out there as safety nets. The House appropriated $28.4 million from the LISRA. The Senate appropriated $11.4 million from the LISRA with a difference of about $17 million. And so even though the total dollars are fairly similar, and you'll hear through these presentations, we move money around differently and from different places. With regards to the SIPA, the House appropriated $4 million from SIPA. The Senate reduced the appropriation of SIPA $9.47 million and required further action of $10.7 million on projects funded by the school capital construction account. So the total differences of those appropriated dollars is about $13.5 million. In the school capital construction account, the House added $30.5 million in the revenue transfer to that account. And the Senate reduced that amount by $10.7 million with a total difference of $10.7 million. And then you'll recall the OFSTA, we transferred that into 2 reserve accounts.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
None of us have that single page you're talking about. We just have the long page.
The chair recognizes Representative Duncan. Please restate what you said.
We all have the long
Yeah.
page, but we don't
Okay.
have the single page.
Okay.
Okay,
we'll have
hold
that
on,
distributed.
Chairman Nicholas. Okay, go ahead, respond.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is it was sent down, it may be in your mailbox, but if not, we'll make sure it gets distributed. It's just the formal document that identifies what the Senate amendments that we're going to go through one by one and that are on that 2-page list. So this is just the formal signature page for this list. So with that,
Mr. Chairman. Okay, just one moment. Just a minute. Let's make sure we're square here. We good? We're not yet. We are not good until the chief clerk is good. Don't move. Yeah, okay, go. Yeah, go ahead, Vice Chair Larson. We'll get
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Body, I just, as good Chairman Nicholas talked about the difference in the LSRA being 17 million. Most of that was the step 3 reductions that we brought back in to the Department of Health. That's the big difference there. And then on the SIPA funds, there's the school CapCon, and then we passed a bill in here appropriating 4 million of that for a cryptocurrency. I forget the term they call that, or the University of Wyoming. So that's the difference there.
Okay. All right, Chairman Nicholas.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So ladies and gentlemen, if you get out the big sheet, we're going to start. And this is just a quick explanation. We'll walk through these kind of as quick as we can, and then we'll be happy to ask questions, but obviously we're short on time. So we'll try to hold the questions back until at the end. And so if you just have questions, then we'll walk through them, each one that you have. So I'm going to take the first one, which is Senate file at the top of the page on the left-hand corner. Senate file for Senate file number 1, third reading amendment number 1. This is a mirror amendment. This is the only mirror amendment from these budget amendments. This was amendment that was brought by Representative Nicholas to Agency 4, State Treasurer's Office. And you may recall this. This was adding 3 positions into the State Treasurer's Office because you may recall the description of it. What we did is we've gone to internal investing, and they simply don't have the accounting staff to keep up with their internal trades and do the accounting and the auditing. And in addition to that, they don't have the computer software to do it. They're doing all this all by longhand. So this is our efforts to bring the back office and middle office to catch up with the investment professionals that we have put into that office. And you may also recall that by adding these professionals in the back office, we have literally saved for the state of Wyoming between 25 and $30 million over the course of the last 3 years. And so we're taking part, and this is special revenue funds, so it's not general fund dollars. And we're basically catching up with the back office for the treasurer's office.
Okay, so members, what we'll do is, as you see the lines on this, section by section, we'll take questions. That obviously was an easy section. Are there any questions for Chairman Nicholas on the identical amendment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next section. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Just so that the members fully understand, the little number up in the corner of this box is an S followed by a 2021.01. So that'll correspond to the sheet of paper you're receiving. And what that is the S stands for the body down the hall. The 2 means it was a second reading amendment. The 0 is because we're a 3 numeral identification, but really the 21 is what is most important next. Means it was amendment 21. So it's second reading amendment 21, and then it was divided. And so that's why the 0.01. And so again, body down the hall, second reading amendment 21, division number 1 starts out with the office of the chief executive, and they increased the funding there by $30,000. That was a pay for within the JAC work for the Department of Education Talking Books program that we'll talk about farther down in this discussion. The next item is in clean coal technology, still in the office of the chief executive, and they changed the funding of the 1.25 million from general fund to SIPA in their suggestion. Moving on down, agency 007, the Wyoming Military Department, they reduce $150,000, as well as the footnote relating to the Veterans Museum and a coordinated effort with the Veterans Museums and Military Department and State Parks. Moving down the list from there, we have 010 Department of Agriculture. This is in the Consumer Protection Division. They reduced $72,922, as well as the FTE that goes along with the large scale inspection program. We discussed that in here. Moving down the list, 024 State Parks and Cultural Resources. This just deletes the footnote that in that agency that was related to the Military Department's Veterans Museum. Moving down the list is 057 Community College Commission, and this is a $2,000 reduction in general funds, but $108,000 in school foundation dollars, and the increase of 1 FTE. And this is for the SLEDS position that was reduced. Moving down the list, and this one, you'll notice there's also a note that it says House second reading of 39, and with that, the reason it's in the related column is that in this body, we took action relating to community colleges as well as the University of Wyoming. They did as well. And so what they have done here is they have removed or added $10 million general fund to the community college block grant funding. And then in 067 University of Wyoming, they have decreased $10 million general fund from the University of Wyoming's block grant. They further add in a section 311 discussing what the standard budget for the state block grant to the University of Wyoming, that it will not exceed $296 million in the immediately succeeding fiscal biennium. So that's what they've done for the higher education. Moving on to 206 Department of Education School Support. They reduced $70,000 general fund, and footnote number 5, which was a discussion of the Talking Books program in the Vision Outreach Services program. And so this was the when they increased the funding in the governor's and the chief executive's office, right at the very top of this section, this is what it was used to pay for. And so that swap was reversed. Moving on to 300, this is a section 300 budget balancer. And so this is reducing the transfer from SIPA to the school capital construction account by $10.7 million due to the amendment that comes in the next one, which is 313. And what they have done here is they have eliminated 10.7 million in funding and added a footnote that the appropriations for a Washakie #2 K through 12 school design and the Fremont #25 high school auditorium projects shall not be funded until further legislative approval. And then 339 in the section 300s, they have removed the Casper Office Building Advisory Task Force, as well as the $20,000 of SIPA that went to pay for legislative time on that task force. And with that, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I would answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, members, are there any questions on the explanation of those related amendments? Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next section. Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members, this next section is somewhat easier to explain. A year ago, this body decided to take the 1 cent statutory severance tax and split it evenly between the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and the LISRA. In December, the Joint Appropriations Committee said, well, let's rethink that. And so in your proposed budget bill, that was deleted and there was no real destination for the 1 cent severance tax. What the other body has done is go back to where we were a year ago, and they've decided in their amendment to put half of it, that is about $64 million into the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund account and half of it into the LISRA. So for perspective, that's like for the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund is worth about $9 billion right now. And so they've said, let's take 6.4 cents and throw it on top of this $9. And the other half goes into the LISRA. Interestingly, on your goldenrod, all that shows up is the LISRA portion, not the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund portion. You may recall our Amendment 27, what we did was to say we'll put half of this 1 cent into the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund reserve account and the other half into the Common School Permanent Land Reserve account. I would stand for questions.
Members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll keep moving. Next section, Representative Simpson, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So members, we're down at the bottom of the page, not quite at the bottom, under the agency named Geological Survey Department. The other chamber's second reading amendment number 7 was actually identical, starting out with our second reading amendment number 7. As you recall, this reinserts stricken language of other 2 footnotes, number 1 and 2. And what that does is we felt it was important to continue the process of studying minerals and gases to determine if they could successfully be developed for the benefit of the state of Wyoming. The other chamber, however, we adopted ours in place, but the other chamber chose to correct their amendment, and they eliminated $130,000 and 1 employee, the person that was going to continue with this study. They eliminated the body and the money for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, members, any questions? Seeing none. Okay, next section, we'll move on to Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, members. This next amendment shows up at the bottom of page 1. It's Senate third reading amendment number 19. These are all just technical corrections. For example, they moved where an apostrophe appears. They have in where there was a dollar amount, they didn't have a dollar sign, so they put in the dollar sign. And then the last technical amendment shows up, if you flip your page, is described there. All this does is make sure that the state auditor complies with existing law with respect to transferring money out of the strategic investments and projects account into the general fund, just so that the auditor can write checks. It doesn't substantively change how the money is spent. It just makes it so the auditor is not breaking the law. So technical correction only.
Members, any questions on this technical questions or corrections? Excuse me. None? Okay, Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Speaker Pro Tem, excuse me. Senate third reading amendment number 16 is a budget balancer. It allocates $1 million to the state auditor's office of LISRA money to be available to ensure that we maintain our statutory reserve, which as you can see is 113 million plus, which represents 5% of the total budget. We have a similar amendment, but it allocates $20 million of LISR money to be available if needed. Stand for any questions.
Members, any questions on the budget balancer? Seeing none. Moving on, Representative Kenner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Ladies and gentlemen, this completes the related or similar category. And I'm referring to the body down the hall, second reading amendment number 15 by Doc Stetter, which was approved. And the reason it's a similar category, if you remember, it's very similar to an amendment brought by Speaker Pro Tem Greer dealing with carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And so I'm going to move down to just below that, the third reading amendment, number 13, which basically deleted that amendment. That's why it's scratched out on your sheet, and then further amended it. And I'll show you where the amendment came in. And if you look on the very first line of both of those, the top line says from the LSRA to the Wyoming Energy Authority. And then if you go down below, that was stricken, that's stricken language. And then also 10 million from the LSRA. Ours was also 10 million to the governor's office. But keeping in mind that the Wyoming Energy Authority is still going to be an integral part to that, and where they will seek applications and help. But the dollars will actually flow through the governor's office. And so again, that's the addition to section 300s. And it was adopted and very similar to ours for carbon capture, utilization, and storage.
Members, any questions? Any questions on the amendment? Next section, Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. This is third reading amendment number 5. And what it does, it does not allow for general fund appropriations from state parks and cultural resources to be expended for grants and payments to any news service. This is similar to a third reading House amendment that we defeated, but the difference in this is it specifically exempts public broadcasting services, advertising, and public notice purposes.
Any questions, members? See no one moving. Okay, next section, Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And folks, in the body down the hall, second reading amendment number 20, Division 1, they removed $6.5 million of state aid from Agency 067, the University of Wyoming, and they put that funding into Agency 048, the Department of Health, and dedicated it to replace the step 2 reduction in comprehensive waivers. Then they come back in a third reading amendment number 8, and they note that amount that was transferred to the Department of Health not be included in their standard budget moving forward. You'll also note in healthcare financing that there's a like amount that they would then be able to capture by moving that general fund. They would be able to capture an equal amount of federal funds. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd answer any questions on that action.
Members, any questions? Any questions on that section? Seeing none. Next section, proceed, Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then on the other body's third reading amendment number 7, in the Department of Aging, they put back in the step 3 reduction for Wyoming Home Services out of the LSRA. And that's one time. No, that is not one time. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd answer any questions on that action.
Members, any questions? Seeing none. Next section, Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a new concept to us here on the other chamber's second reading amendment number 18. They have appropriated $325,000 from the general fund to be used for the following purposes: land appraisals, environmental analysis, and other necessary action to complete land exchanges or sales on or adjacent to the Medicine Bow Forest and the Grand Teton National Park Forest. You recall earlier today, we advanced House Bill 164, which has the potential of selling one of our parcels that we own in Grand Teton National Forest. And the other half of this, the State Land Investment Board is looking at doing land swaps with the federal government on the Medicine Bow. This will involve several thousand acres. I'm personally excited. This is one of the rare occasions that our state is actually working with the federal government to do some land swaps that would advantage both parties. But this appropriation, $325,000, would facilitate studying both of those areas out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Members, any questions? Any questions for Representative Simpson? Seeing none. Next section, Representative Kenner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting really close now. We're down towards the bottom of the page in the unrelated section. And I'm referring to the body down the hall, second reading amendment number 19, which was adopted, which puts in addition to section 300s and does approve a general fund expenditure of $38,000 to create the Educational Programs Advisory Task Force. And you can see the rest of the details there. And I have additional information I can help you with about what that task force will do. I think it's a pretty good purpose. And then I'll call your attention to third reading amendment number 12, just below that. And that's really a technical correction. And what happened was, as they got to looking at the amendment itself, it referred to a committee several times, and it's actually a task force. And so this was a technical correction, taking out committee and replacing it with task force. So thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Any questions for Representative Kenner? Seeing none. Next section, Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. So the last one that we'll do is for Senate Bill number 1, third reading amendment number 18. And this is called the CARES Act Funding Balancer. So as we described when we were presenting the budget, we basically made the recommendation to this body that we take the CARES Act funds that we appropriated on a special session back in May and basically remove the dollar amounts for those bills that came in and said, so we put the request in place, we removed the dollars out because the idea is, and it still is, that we will have a special session that deals with those remaining dollars of CARES Act 1. And there's about $20 million of trying to get the right terminology for it, grants that were already issued by the governor, but they couldn't complete the projects before the end of those, the December 31st. And so they were left unfunded or incompleted. There's also roughly another $18 million out there for allocated and encumbered, but not expended. It means they weren't transferred at all, just because of either it wasn't done timely, or the applications were a tad late, or had some type of technical corrections. And those, we know that there are funds available at least for that first 20 million already that are basically sitting in the account. And we expect with refunds and for different other actions, there's likely to be another 18 to cover those acts. All those funds have already been reviewed by the governor's office and fit most of the qualifications, but not all of them. And so the Senate took a different approach than we did. And actually we kind of did it on purpose so that we have both ends of the spectrum covered. And so what the Senate side did is it took the 20 million and the 18 and put that in a kind of category 1 and said, these will be funded first through the actions of the governor. And if there are no other actions from our body, if we don't have a special session, it took the 4 bills that had appropriated CARES Act dollars from May that were filed and just kind of lines them up and basically divides up what is left into those programs. And so that's the House Bill 10, which has to do with the the large company, the large company program. There was Senate Bill 50 that had to do with the, what was it? Oh, that was the ag component to it. And the last one appropriated from House Bill 197, that was $40 million for broadband. And the last one is the smaller one for that invest in the nursing program. There's a separate bill for that, by the way. So it basically created those categories and said if nothing else happens, and if there's whatever fund comes in, it gives the authority for the governor to reenact those and bring those programs back to life so that those funds can be expended by the end of the year, which is required under the CARES Act. So basically, we've got a balancer on the Senate side that puts the money one way. We've got the House position, which is we're going to do this in a special session and evaluate all programs and then line up what we think the priority is in a special session versus just on what bills showed up on file. And that way it gives us the option of going either way and depending on, assuming that we pass a budget. So with that regards, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, what happens next? So next, the Joint Conference Committee will be appointed by the Speaker and by the President of the Senate. And then we, whoever those folks are on that Joint Conference Committee, sometime next week, we'll begin having discussions about balancing out the differences between the House and the Senate. Sometimes that can be done in a day. Sometimes that takes 2 weeks. It just depends on where we're at and where we're standing. Obviously it's important, extremely important that we do come up with a budget if possible, because that's what our responsibility is. And if we don't come up with a budget, that essentially we're turning over the directives from our last session in March and how we left it at the $2.95 million budget. And all the reductions just become executive reductions. And so it's important that we find some common ground. And I think that we'll get there, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to get there. So we'll keep you updated and abreast of that as that proceeds. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Nicholas. Is there any questions of the body? Okay, seeing no questions, there being no further discussion, Senate File number 1 is referred directly to a conference committee of 5 members from each house to meet, resolve the differences between the houses with respect to both budget bills. It's House Bill 001 and Senate File 001. Members, the Speaker will appoint the conference committee when he gets back into the chair. Mr. Speaker, are you ready? You can do that. Okay. What do you do right now? Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. There being no further discussion of the Senate File number 1 is referred directly to Conference Committee of 5 members from each house to meet and resolve the differences between the House with respect to both bills, House Bill 0001, Senate File 0001. Conference Committee will be Chair Nicholas, Schwartz, Walters, Kinner, Larson, Lloyd.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the consent list consisting of the following bills: House Bill 115, House Bill 120, and House Bill 229.
Would any member like any of the bills on consent removed? Any of the bills on consent removed? Reading clerk, please read the bills on consent list.
House Bill 115, sponsored by Representative Paxton. Big or trophy game animal, minimum hunting age, an act relating to game and fish, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 120, sponsored by Representative Flitner. Hathaway Scholarships, Success Curriculum in Middle School, an act relating to the Hathaway Scholarship Program, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 229, sponsored by Representative Nyman. Livestock Identification Choice Act, an act relating to agriculture, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bills 115, 120, and 229 pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Roll call on the consent list. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Larson Dan. We have 60 aye. As for House Bill 115, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Banks, aye to no. Larson Dan? Larson Dan, aye to no. Knapp, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 57 aye, 3 no. As for House Bill 120, are there any changes? Larson Dan, aye to no. Gray, aye to no. Jennings, aye to no. Fortner, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Ottman, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 53 aye, 7 no. And as for House Bill 229, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 60 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bills 115, 120, and 229 have passed the House.
Mr. Speaker,
Chairman Paxton,
privilege of the floor.
please proceed.
Would you help me welcome a former student from Encampment Jamie Marquetti, who is also a special friend of an unnamed member of our body. Jamie?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Jamie, welcome. Glad to have you here. Apparently your professor didn't teach you about the folks you hang around with. Be cautious. We're great to have you here. All right, members. We're at that order of business of bills on third and reading and final passage. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 156.
House Bill 156, sponsored by Representative Sherwood, 24-hour wine permits, an act relating to alcoholic beverages, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We do have an amendment. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 156 and ask for your favorable consideration. You'll remember yesterday on second reading, there was an issue between the Attorney General's office and the department and LSO on some language that was deleted from House Bill 13. And so I brought that back in. Apparently, after further conversations internal to attorneys, they decided it's much better, instead of referencing House Bill 13, because that did become law, to reference it as Chapter 22 in the 2021 Wyoming session laws. Apparently, it's a very important distinction, and I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Any member first time? First time. Seeing none, members, we're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 156. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment is adopted. House Bill 156, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. 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 Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 60 aye.
House Bill 156, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the House, House Bill 156 has passed the House. So members, I'm just going to pause for a minute. I need to consult with one of our colleagues. So just stand at ease for just a moment. So members, as you know, the next bill up has 14 amendments. I know of at least 4 more in the works. And we want to give the body time to understand what the amendments are, not dropping them out on the floor at the same time. So, and if we started into them now, we'd be breaking, committees would be meeting, et cetera. So I think the interest of at least in visiting with the minority floor leader, the majority floor leader is that we will take a motion to recess the, okay, we will do a couple standing committee reports on request of the chief clerk. We'll take a motion from the majority floor leader to stand in recess until 2 p.m. There'll be a request from Representative McGuire potentially to have a calling of a caucus. And then, I don't know if this is a all. Okay. Okay. And so anyway, so we'll have a short caucus that will be announced here in a moment, but we'll stand in recess until 2 p.m. So right now, reports from standing committees.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 244, State Investment Administration, respectfully report same back to the House with recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Kenner, Larson, Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 239, Workers' Compensation, Student Learner Agreements. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Burkhart, Duncan, Air, Greer, Heiner, Sherwood, Western. Noes, Representative Gray. Representative Duncan, Vice Chairman.
All right. Any committee announcements? Committee announcements? No, not yet. Not doing. Actually, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, give us a motion and then we'll do committee announcements. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Committee announcements. Vice Chair Larson, Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 2 appropriations will meet down in by the Attorney General's office in 113 to continue on hearing House Bill 262 and the re-referred bill House 82.
Thank you very much. Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet. I guess if we're going to have a caucus, it'd be after the caucus to consider 3 bills, HB 77, School District Reorganization, House Bill 175, Suicide Prevention 2, and House Bill 147, Education Expense Tax Credit.
Thank you. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you. Committee number 7, Corporations, will meet over the noon recess period to hear House Bill 16, Improvement in Service Districts, House Bill 256, Sovereignty Act, and House Bill 72, Transfer of Water and Sewer Operations.
Thank you. Chairman Olson. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Upon recess of caucus, the Judiciary Committee will meet to further consider Senate File 124.
Any other announcements? Any other announcements? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please proceed.
I'd like to announce a meeting of the House Republican Caucus upon adjournment in the historic Supreme Court chambers. Thank you. Upon noon recess.
Thank you. Any further announcements? So any further announcements? With that, the House is in recess until 2 p.m.